I'd like to call this March the 6th, 2023 meeting of the Paducah Planning Commission to order, and if you would join me in rising and saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Summers, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Benberry.
Here.
Commissioner Griffin.
Here.
Commissioner Morrison.
Here.
Commissioner Pollard. Commissioner Schramke.
Here.
Chair Wade.
Here. Mr. Griffin, I believe you have our approval of minutes motion.
Yeah, I move that the reading of the minutes for January 5th, 2023 be waived and that the minutes of said meeting as prepared by staff be approved as written.
Second.
I assume everyone's had a chance to review the minutes. Any corrections, additions, deletions? Hearing none, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Griffin.
Here.
Commissioner Morrison.
Aye.
Commissioner Schramke.
Aye.
Commissioner Benberry.
Aye.
Chairman Wade.
Aye. We have no urban renewal business to take care of, no continuing petitions from planning, so we'll move into new petitions for the Planning Commission. For those who are not familiar with what's going to happen tonight, there will be a motion for each proposed preliminary development plat or other actions. All three of these will be public hearings. The staff will, after the motion is read, the staff will provide the background and comments on the proposal. Then the Planning Commission will call a public hearing to order. The purpose of the public hearing is to obtain citizens' input, positive or negative, about the project. We take this testimony into account when forming our decision about how the project conforms to the current zoning ordinance and how the project fits into the city's comprehensive plan. During the public hearing testimony from you concerned citizens, I would ask that you come to the podium over here to my left, your right. Announce your name and address before beginning by speaking into the microphone that's there so it can be part of the record. Address your comments to the commission, and then please be brief and allow others to speak. After having all this testimony presented, the public hearing will be closed. The Planning Commission will ask any final questions or make any comments before a vote is taken. So with that, I would ask Commissioner Morrison to read our first motion.
Yes, sir. I move that this commission adopt a resolution approving the amendment to a development plan for property located at 4160 Olivet Church Road.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Summers, would you like to present staff information?
Thank you, Chairman Wade. This proposal is for a new 10,175 square foot truck maintenance facility. The proposed activities would be tire changing, engine maintenance, and that sort of thing for semi-trucks. Access to the site would be on a ingress-egress easement that this site and also the hotel that's behind it would share. The petitioner has proposed 10 vehicular spaces on the site, and 7 will be located on the southwest portion, and 3, including the ADA spaces, will be next to the building. Normally, the prescribed number of parking spaces would be 16, which is 4 per bay, but because this is a truck maintenance facility, there's not that turnover like a Valvoline or the Walmart oil change place, or there's not that high rate of turnover. So we are comfortable with the 10 parking spaces as shown. The petitioner is proposing a 30-foot landscape buffer on the south lot line. There is a single-family home to the south, and that's in accordance with our zoning regulations. And further, they're providing a 20-foot buffer on the north property line between them and the hotel so that people can sleep at night and there won't be that noise coming through. At this time, the only comment that staff had was for if curb and gutter is going to be extended onto the hotel property, that property owner would have to sign off on the site plan as well, although it may be moved on a final site plan that comes through. So with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions that you all have, and also the petitioner's professional representative is here to answer any questions as well.
Question. The 10 parking spaces, does that include employees?
Yes.
So number of employees is,
There's 5 to 9 people, max shift is 9.
so 9, could easily be 9 vehicles? How is 10 going to suffice?
They're going to have a lounge. My understanding is there's a lounge area.
So every trucker is waiting?
Excuse me, could you come up to the podium, please? And who are you? And
Yeah, sorry.
My name is Morgan Salzman. I work with Kimley Horn in our Nashville office, and I'm representing our Memphis team, who's the design team for this project.
So you said there are 9 employees, and they could possibly all be there covering 9
Yes,
of
the
them.
maximum shift would have 9 employees.
Okay, so 4, assuming you're full, I hope you are,
Right.
4 truckers would wait?
Yes, yes. They have the lounge space that he was mentioning, so they'll have that area to wait while they're working, they're getting their truck work done.
And Mr. Summer, I assume that was the thinking.
Yes, correct.
Thank you.
And then is the rest of the lot gravelled?
It should be paved, so
Oh,
you're talking about the
gravel
area
or
behind the
paved?
building? Yes, yes.
Okay, so while you have the 10 designated parking spots, you have plenty of space for
Correct.
undesignated parking.
Correct.
Any other questions while she's up here? Anyone else?
My name is Curtis Pitt. I'm 4105 Olivet Church Road, which would be the family south of this business. 2 questions is, what is the hours of operation? Is this a 24-hour facility? Because I have worked in the logistics industry for 7 years in Memphis, Tennessee, so I know a lot about it. I know a lot of these businesses that they're referring to are 24 hours. So I know it is a residential, because I'm not the only home in there, but 24 hours, 7 days a week, that's a lot of in and out traffic next to my home. Also, if it's just 9 employees, why do we need a 10,000 square foot building? And then also, are they gonna allow parking for the tractor trailers that come with these trucks into these parking lots, and where are they gonna put those trailers?
Judge Ritt, respond?
Yes, I can help address some of those questions. So where the tractor trailers will be, the area in the rear that we were discussing, that's probably going to be utilized to kind of handle the trailers while the trucks are being worked on. And typically, you're correct, this is a 24-hour facility, but they're willing to, work with you all on some sort of time frame where it can be shut down. I believe that their typical operating hours that they prefer is 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. That's really the time frame that they prefer. But like I said, it is typically a 24-hour facility.
Okay. You have a follow-up?
Excuse me?
Do you have a follow-up question?
Yes.
Okay, please do.
With this 10,000 square foot building and the land that is there, and you're gonna have 9 employees taking up 10 parking spots, where is all the overflow gonna go? Because you can't have, I know how many outlets, I've been in this business, I know how many trucks are gonna come in and out of that with trailers hauling 60, 70, 80,000 pounds. It's a lot of weight on a small area. These trucks are gonna have to, it's not feasible. Not a 10,000 square foot building on 2 acres.
Okay, I understand your concerns. We would normally defer that the engineering department has studied the streets and so forth of what that is.
Right.
That's, the design part is not within our purvey.
Right.
Okay.
I understand that, but.
I take your comments valid, are
Right, I
certainly,
mean,
I
like
think
I said, I've
valid.
lived there 11 years, going on 12, and I know that's a wetland, so how far are they gonna have to dig down to get to dry land to build this back up, and how long is this project gonna take?
excuse me a minute.
Yes, ma'am.
I want to get back to your statement of probably, and we may be able to, and, I guess I want more definitive answers as to the hours of operation, et cetera, not if and maybe. I wanted to know more. Now, Josh, is that something that we could
I work for
request?
UPS, and you wouldn't want me coming knock on your door at 11 o'clock delivering a package. And I don't want a truck turn around in front of my house.
Just a minute, sir. Is that something that we can include, that the hours would only be from when to when?
Yes, as part of
Okay.
the amendment to the development plan.
So
since-
therefore, I guess my question is back to you. Is this, are you saying definitely you would do that, or are we back to probably?
I'd have to talk to our client to confirm what hours they would be okay with, but it is typically, like I said, a 24-hour service facility. However, they do understand the concern of the residential area and are willing to negotiate with you all on the hours that they're willing to be, or able to be open.
My biggest concern is probably ends up, starts from 7 to 10 PM, and then in a month, it's a 24-hour operation, and we're not aware of it if we don't put it in the plan.
Absolutely.
The way to handle that is part of, if it is approved, is to attach that condition to the approval of set hours by this body, is a condition of approval, is how that would be managed.
On a separate issue, question I have, Josh, is that going past this facility, there's a nice street with a really nice cul-de-sac at the end of it. What can be done to prevent tractor trailers from going past those residences and using that cul-de-sac as a turnaround?
I'm not sure anything can be done
That's fine.
since it's dedicated to public use.
Okay. Just wanted to ask for their benefit.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, sir.
On what you just mentioned about the cul-de-sac, it's already being used because on the 4-lane, every night there's 10, 15 semis lined up along the side because the truck stops don't have the capacity.
That's right.
Oh, so they're using that as a sleep spot?
Not a sleep spot, but trucks are trying to get turned around and they decide to use that cul-de-sac. So it's already has damage where trucks go back there with 70, 80,000 pounds and you can see where they have flattened the road already. And like I said, they're lined up along the 4-lane on Olivet Church Road already every night and worse on the weekends. So you put this much more traffic, semi-trailers with a 24-hour, 7 days a week facility, you're just causing more.
Well, the only issue with that is whatever we do tonight is not going to affect what's already happening there. I think there's other avenues. I don't know if it's the police department or Public Works or who should they contact about
Rick
that?
Murphy is
Yeah,
here.
there may
I
be
don't
some
ask him to
signage
speak on it.
that could be put up. I would have to check on that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
But and the other thing what she said about the negotiation, is that gonna be before we just, I mean, me as the person south of the property that connects to this property, I mean, I'd like to know,
I believe what Josh says, and correct me if I'm wrong, Josh, is that we could add to this,
but, yes, ma'am.
and that would be then a requirement for the company, so they could decide if they wanted
I
to do.
understand that, but before we vote tonight, is that gonna be something that is a yes or a no, or are we just gonna say, well, we can add it later? And then later
No.
they decide 6
I won't
months from
vote
now
on
that.
that. I won't vote for that.
No, that'll be
Yeah, we will
decided.
get that decided,
It'll be decided tonight.
yes.
Okay.
Yes, please, come forward.
I wanted to ask about before we go any further from here, any idea on the truck traffic? I mean,
I would have to ask, I don't know what the typical, I would have to ask our client if they have typical numbers, and we could definitely get those and share with you.
okay,
Okay.
sure there's been a marketing study.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Pitt. I'm Curtis's wife. Something I wanted to add, that this is most definitely a wetland. It floods, so they are going to have to dig down 7 to 10 feet deep. The person that was coming out there that was doing the surveying, he didn't even understand how they were going to be able to fit everything in there. Also, with it being a wetland, there are bats for a bat habitat that are in there. We hear the noise from the truck stop that is across Carroll Road. I cannot imagine a 24-hour facility right on top of our home. This is our home. And it is already so loud and with interstate traffic. And then you're gonna have 10 employees and how many trucks going in and out of there? They also would wanna go around our house, in between our house and the storage unit. That road is the original Olivet Church Road. It's not even as wide as this whole desk. There's no way that you can get semis in and out, going in and out, all the way around our house. This isn't just next to our house, this is going continuously around and around the house. So how are you gonna make that turn? Because that turn is going to have to be widened. There's just no possible way.
I do believe we have a truck turn plan. That's what I'm trying to pull out.
Last page.
So this is how they have it laid out currently for the trucks to get in and out. They're gonna use this whole area to swing out.
I'm not being rude, but there is no way there is that much room in that little lot for everything you all are getting ready to do. There's no way.
Am I allowed to look with her as well? I literally look.
This is our neighbor.
So that's why I'm here as well.
Well, we ask whoever is going to be approached to identify themselves and direct their comments to us, really not between
Okay, I
them,
just wanted
but
to see if I could look at the same time.
I will say for the record, my name is Curtis Pitt again, 4105. The man that come in and did Mr. Robert Corley was originally sent out to do the engineering survey, like test the land. Came to my front door, knocked on my door and said, this is not enough land for what they need to build. Somebody's gonna be in contact with you about buying your property. Nobody ever was.
okay, well,
He said, with the size of this building, they're gonna need more than what they have there. And that comes from Southern Tire Mart, their engineer that they sent out to do the land survey.
I believe what you say. Unfortunately, that person's not here to give that testimony on your behalf.
Andrew is the person that can give us the information we need.
Well, okay. Any other questions? Please, whoever, I saw a hand go up in the back. Oh, I didn't see your hand.
That's okay.
I went ahead and called on her, so we'll go. Sorry about that.
Hi, my name's Shel Halverson. I'm the owner of AAA Stowaway at 4070 Olivet Church Road. So I just have a question. So there is, I think y'all were talking about the side road that separates the property and our storage. Okay. Are y'all going to be utilizing that? No, okay. I was just checking just to see, because that road is not being maintained. We're trying to get ownership of it to maintain it, so I just wanted to make sure, because it does butt up to us, so that's all.
Because that is your primary access to your spot, isn't it?
It is, that's our
Okay.
only access.
I noticed that.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am, please approach and identify yourself.
My name is Brooks Mariano, 4075 Olivet Church Road. Just bought my dream home, actually. And to know that this is now going in across the street, it's kind of gut-wrenching. And I made some notes, being that we are a cul-de-sac there. Having that coming in, that's where I wanted to see how you plan on getting these trucks in and out. There's animals. I have 2 pigs, which I made sure I was low. I have 2 pigs, I have 2 dogs. My goal is to have some chickens, and this was like my little slice of heaven. And now having all that over there between the noise, the lights, it's just gonna be right on top of mine and Jen and Curtis's property that are right across the street from us, Mr. and Mrs. Pitt. And I just think it's gonna be too much with all the children and the animals that are in that neighborhood. Plus, there's a habitat of bats over there, and they're little brown bats, which I did some research on them, Myotis lucifagus. And they eat between 600 and 1,200 mosquitoes per hour. We are in a flood zone right there. That's why they rebuilt and did all the stuff they did around that neighborhood anyway. So killing that habitat or building that there is gonna cause them bats to relocate. So for economical reasons, they need to send some environmentalists out to check that out. Because it helps keep the mosquitoes away. And they still eat over half the population of our area of just night insects alone. But it's just gonna be so much noise, population, lighting, and we're just a small neighborhood that's a cul-de-sac no less. Would you wanna live there? It's gonna lower our property values, everything. So please ask yourself, would you wanna live there? Can you please show me where the in and out is? As far as where the trucks are gonna be coming in and out?
This is the entrance right there.
And coming from, where is, okay, there's Olivet Church. So they're gonna be coming in and going up? No, there's not enough room there. There's not enough room, not without driving over half of my property. Because we own that whole corner lot. I have the surveys to prove it. When you turn down Olivet Church Road, let's see, we're 4075, so it's gonna be this, should be this whole corner over here, the whole back highway. Up top is my backyard, but even all the way over to the road. Only 40 feet from the ditch is not our property line.
So this is the hotel. Are you talking about down here?
So
or-
down the hotel, we're on this side of the street, and then Mr. and Mrs. Pitt are on the opposite side, which this would be butted up against their house. My property exceeds all the way to the beginning of that church road where you turn in. And they've already been putting markers and digging holes on my property, and I went out there the other day to ask why. Otherwise, I wouldn't even known about this meeting.
Okay.
And I have the survey that's less than a year old to prove it. And where are they gonna plan on parking all these for this type of facility?
So while the trucks are being serviced, they're going to be inside the building.
Inside the building, okay. Well, at least that's a little better for parking, but I just don't see how that's feasible there. That's all I really needed to say is that I'm worried about how it's gonna affect the natural living creatures there. And how it's gonna affect just a small neighborhood with lots of kids and animals. It's just a little neighborhood.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything you want to comment back against what has been heard?
I do not think there is going to be any, encroaching on your property. If this property is purchased by them, they will stay on their property.
They've already done all mine. That's how I knew it was happening. They were literally in my other
Okay,
driveway.
let her finish and then
Sorry.
comment back to us, please.
That's just to check utilities, to ensure that, they need to mark the utilities to ensure there's access to the property. Would be my assumption as to why they were on your property.
Okay, then why were they digging holes?
I don't have an answer for you on that one. I'm not sure.
Any other comments or questions?
Got one more, and I'm done. You say these trucks will be parked inside the facility as they're being worked on, correct? What about the trucks that are waiting to be worked on or just got done being worked on that are waiting to be picked up? So how many trucks are gonna be on this lot at one time? And trailers?
I can't confirm the answer to that, but with the queuing space on here, there's enough space to have a truck here, and a truck here. The likelihood of that happening is extremely slim. That is not,
And you're saying this is inside or outside? I'm talking about outside the facility, not inside.
well, there would be one outside, and one inside.
So you're,
I'm not saying that that
So
will
only- so
occur,
you're
there's
saying this is only-
space for that.
there's only space for 3 tractor trailers on a 10,000
No,
square?
per bay. There's enough for 3 per bay.
Okay, and how many bays?
4.
So it's 12 trucks inside, correct?
No, that's 4 trucks inside and 8 trucks
So
outside.
12 trucks?
Yes.
Okay, so, and they're gonna say that 12 trucks is the max that can be on that lot?
Yes. That's
For a
the max that
For
can
a
fit.
24-hour facility, only 12 tractor trailers can fit on this lot.
I
what
don't
about
understand
trailer?
the question.
I'm saying is, okay, My question is, how many trucks are you gonna allow on your property at one time?
There can be, 12 can fit in this area. 12 can fit in the building and outside of the
Now,
building.
is that truck and trailer or just
Yes.
truck?
Truck and trailer. You can see how
We need
big
to wrap
is.
this up. We need to wrap this up. Hopefully you're getting your questions answered.
I am, but I'm just questioning because I've been in that business. I know how this works. There's room for 12 trucks. So what happens when there's 20 or 25 waiting to get in this place to get their tires changed or new tires or worked on? Where are those trucks gonna go?
You're asking us to predict market conditions that we don't know those things, so. Any other questions? Comments?
I would just like to clarify on that. So
Please come to the
12 trucks
mic.
at one
Yes,
time.
you need to be at the microphone.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to clarify. 12 trucks at one time. That's what you're anticipating.
No, we're not anticipating that. You can have 4 in the building, 4 will be worked on. There is space that he asked, what are they gonna do while they're waiting? You can have a truck here, waiting to be pulled in.
Okay.
I mean, when it's full, it's full.
Right. I guess what he was trying to ask, and I totally agree with him, what number is full?
That would be for the tenant to determine. I can't speak to that.
So that's a little disturbing as well. They can't even give you a number for what's full.
Any other comments, questions before we close the public hearing? All right, I'll declare the public hearing is completed. Any questions from the commission?
Are we gonna, before we vote on this, put the amendment in there, or, to me, if this is, there's a few questions that still need to be answered.
Well, and the other thing is, we went from 24 hours to 7 to 11. I don't know, or 7 to 10, or whatever it is. If you close at 10, everybody's not out of there at 10, you close at 10. So, are we informed enough to tell them the hours of operation that would be good for the community and for their business?
I'd like to remind the planning commission, you always have the option to table till next month with a list of your questions for the petitioner to answer. That way we have that information prepared and ready for you for the next month's meeting.
I move that we table this until next month.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on that motion?
Before we vote, I think we need to make it clear to the petitioner what we're asking for.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. Well, let's discuss. What are we asking for? We're asking for hours of operation. What else are we asking for? I guess I'd like some, and I don't know where I'd get this from, maybe engineering, I don't know. Is 12 a correct number for that size facility? Or do they need the larger facility? Who would be the person to give us advice on that? Or the department?
It also looks to me that road's not big enough for that to take on.
What?
It doesn't look to me that road's big enough to take tractor trailers coming in.
That's another
all day
point.
long. That's,
That's another
Is
point.
that 3, Josh? You got 3?
Yes.
Okay. Tell me who Southern Tire Mark is. Is that,
They work with Pilot they do this type of facility with
so they're
Pilot.
contracted by Pilot?
Correct.
So could, I'm curious, Robert Corley obviously made some testimony that is of interest to this mission, and it'd be nice to hear what his thoughts really are, if that's possible. It works, but,
The only body that has subpoena power is the Board of Adjustment.
right, I'm not suggesting.
If they wish to present his testimony, then they can present that. Otherwise, it's just hearsay.
Yes.
So please don't think that we need to take that into account. But there are
Not now,
legitimate. Yeah,
but
not
we have a
this
month
point.
now to,
Yeah.
if
Does-
possible, if we could get.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't want hearsay either, obviously.
Do we have any other questions that we want Josh to look into before we have? What do you have so far, Josh, that we're questioning?
Hours of operation. Is 12 a correct amount for the facility? Is the road big enough to handle the trailer, the truck and trailer traffic? And for Mr. Corley to appear if possible.
If they wish to substantiate what they've attributed to him, that person would need to appear to provide that. But we're certainly not requesting or subpoenaing him.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
We're done with public hearings, sir.
I was going to let you information that this man asked for.
Well, we're not taking more information like that. We're formulating. Yeah.
Anything about the bats?
They have the machine shop behind the pilot already.
Miss, okay.
Sorry. I forgot to say that one.
Let's see.
What was your question?
Anything about the bats?
I don't know if that's within our purvey.
Sounds far beyond our general, never had it before, but
That one
dealt
need-
with this in the past and other,
A question like
Right.
that would need to go to the appropriate federal authorities.
okay. I removed the request.
Is that for your client?
Yes, we can get these questions
Okay.
answered and get these back to you.
We appreciate their desire to invest in Paducah
Yes.
and don't want to make it any more difficult. We also have people that we want to make sure that they're heard
Absolutely.
and their questions properly answered. We ready to call the vote to table? Please call the rolls.
Commissioner Benberry.
Aye.
Commissioner Griffin.
Aye.
Commissioner Morrison.
Aye.
Commissioner Shramky.
Aye.
Chairman Wade.
Aye.
And Mr. Chairman, very quickly, I'd like to mention for the Pitts and Miss Mariano what exactly tabling means and when to be back.
Yeah, please do. And we did table it in a date certain next meeting, I believe.
It was just tabled general the way I've wrote it.
Okay. We'll bring it up at the next meeting.
So for Mr. and Miss Pitt, Miss Mariano, what that means is that we will take a look at this again on April the 3rd at 5:30 is when we should have everything back, same time, same place.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner
Ready for me?
Shramky, I think you have our next.
I move that the preliminary subdivision plat for 3315 Pines Road be approved and that the matter be continued generally pending submission of a final plat incorporating all requirements made known to the petitioner at the conclusion of the hearing.
Second.
All right. Staff report?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a proposed preliminary subdivision plat for 3315 Pines Road. Right now, it's proposed to be around 37 lots, and each lot will contain a two-family dwelling on it. In Phase 1, which is shown on the plat, every lot meets the R3 zoning requirements of at least 50 feet of frontage and 4,000 square feet per unit, or therefore a 4,000 square foot lot. There is proposed to be one singular right-of-way called Violet Court in Phase 1. And the petitioner's professional representative will talk a little bit more about that as well. In Phase 2, there's proposed to be an additional cul-de-sac. As of right now, for stormwater, in Phase 1, there is a detention area proposed along the creek on the north side. It's shown as Track B. Track C is proposed to be kept as open area. And both these areas will be retained by the petitioner. To the north of this site is River Oak subdivision, which is a high-density subdivision. Most of the lots are 6,750 square feet, which is actually smaller than the R3 prescribed standard of 8,000 square feet. Further east is Oakview subdivision, which is primarily two-family dwellings, Some are in condominium forms of ownership, and some are two-family dwellings on one lot. And to the west, of course, is a multifamily development consisting of 72 units that was constructed in 1972. The only comment right now for the preliminary plat stage is for just a very minor amendment where it says median should be medium density in the zoning information. And both the petitioner and the petitioner's professional representatives are here to answer any questions that you all may have.
I think most of you know me, but for everyone else out here that's here to understand this, my name is Michael Gardner from Sitework Survey and Design. We are the surveyors, land surveyors, and civil engineers for this proposed project. It is off of Pines Road. And as you see it on this first, which right now we're just dealing with the section 1, which you see is where we've got drawn in the duplexes. There's 16 lots to that we have drawn in with a duplex on each particular lot. As you'll notice, the driveways are a little bit different because we're doing that for the sidewalks, which we have talked to the city engineer's office, and that's what they've recommended that we do. We've had a good relationship with the planning and city engineer's office. They've helped us through this project the whole time. The sidewalks work better on the north and south side of Violet Court when we alternate the dual driveways and then have the single ones in the middle. I think you can see that on your plat if you take a look at it. Mine's larger than yours, so I don't know if they show up, but if you'll see, there's a little bit difference in the driveways. Each duplex will have a single car garage, 1 story. These will be nice. I know they didn't really play into it, but it's not a project that is going to try to sneak in a bunch of duplexes, but these are probably going to be in the value of around $600,000, just to give you an idea of what type of development it's going to be. We will be dedicating Violet Court as you see it. It will be connecting at the engineer's request, Rucker Avenue. Our original plan was just to have Violet Court come in off of Pines Road, but for traffic flow, the planning department and engineering department wanted us to connect with River Oaks subdivision and connect with Rucker Avenue for better access control with the vehicles, which we're all for that. That's fine. We're good for that. We will be putting in sidewalks, like I said, on both sides of the road. The only place they wouldn't be would be in the cul-de-sacs. We will be putting a temporary cul-de-sac at the very end of Violet Court, at where you see the ditch. That ditch is the one that kind of goes through the middle of the property that you see all the contour lines on. The main thing that will help with the drainage is we have reserved track B for the reservation for a detention pond to be designed, which it has been designed, and it will be turned into the city engineer's office for approval once or if this is approved. The track C that Josh mentioned, that will be a landscaped area, and it'll also be for signage, and maybe even for mailboxes, things like that, to be able to get access there. There will not be a duplex or any development on track C. Track C, if you're looking for it, is right at the intersection of Rucker Avenue and Violet Court. Has everybody been able to find that on there? This eventually in section 2, which we're not asking for approval tonight because we don't even have it designed yet, that will eventually go across the ditch and form 2 other cul-de-sacs. that will end, and there will be additional development just similar to this development here, but this development will take several years to build out. So at one time, and you'll see a storm sewer that crosses our property, that comes from our neighbors across from Royal Circle. Royal Circle is a private street, not a city street. It has two entrances to our property, but we're not using those because it's a street that's over on the opposite side, is what Josh mentioned, is a high-density apartment complex. They own this property at one time. Used to be under Falconite. It's now under Willow Oaks Bella Vista LLC. This property was purchased, and so now we're going to be developing this between Royal Circle and Pines Road. But right now, for this particular meeting, we're only asking for approval of Section 1, and we're showing Section 2 to be developed at a future date. That date is to be determined. Once this is approved, if it's approved tonight, street plans will be submitted to the city, along with drainage plans and the stormwater detention to be approved by the city engineer's office. We have worked on those, and we've worked with them to do that. Obviously, we had a major event storm last Friday that affected our entire city and county, where water was piled up everywhere. We had major flooding and major wind damage with trees. We've had that same effect out here because at one time this was all woods, and it's been timbered. And when it got timbered, the timber cutter did make ups and downs as he got the timber out. But the good thing about that event is, I know Rick Murphy, being the city engineer, he called our owner and chief engineer, Jason Goins, and they went out there during the storm last Monday and watched it to see if there's anything they could do to try to take care of it temporarily to help the people in River Oaks subdivision. He has given us some suggestions. He also met out there with the developer this morning, the Burnett's, and told them what he recommended that they do. He was all in favor of this, but he just wanted to make sure these people would be protected prior to us building the streets and putting in the stormwater detention, which is, the stormwater detention will be the important part, because that will protect everybody in that adjoining subdivision. And that's for one of the first things that will be put in prior to any building being built, is a stormwater detention. And that will be approved by the city engineer's office. But he walked out there with Burnett's. They have assured me that they were, Art Burnett is one of the developers, and he's going to be out there this week doing exactly what Rick Murphy has asked him to do, as far as construction, as far as building up some berms in there and making a ridge and putting some little feeders off, swales that will, in case we have an event like we did before. Any other event is not a major event, but last Friday was a major event. In case that happens again, before they're able to get all this detention pond completed and the rest of the project, we want to make sure that they're protected in every way. I even mentioned to some of them, we will have screening all up and down the property line. That's the property line that separates this development from River Oaks. More than likely, that screening will be probably a tall wood board fence to protect them from their backyards and to protect this development from their backyards, just to separate the two entities. River Oaks is an older subdivision done in 1953, so it was built prior to the regulations that are required now. We've been working with the planning department. They've been great. The engineering department's been great to get this in here. This piece of property is not the easiest to design as far as having access, because we've got a railroad track on the southerly side that we can't cross. We've got a good street and a major artery in Pines Road that we're using. That Pines Road will also be used because we have an erosion control plan that has been developed to protect River Oaks. And we have got that in place. It's been approved by the city in November of last year. Obviously, the weather has had a major effect on being able to put all that in, but the construction entrance, as they build any of these streets and build any of these townhomes and duplexes, they will come off of Pines Road and not off of their subdivision road. It will all be off Pines Road. That way we won't affect any of the neighbors in River Oaks subdivision. There's a similar development that you just approved. It's going to be similar to this. That is across the railroad tracks on North 32nd Street, on 32nd Street. I think you just approved that one. That was for Cena Development. I don't know if you remember that or not, but that was approved last month. And this is going to be a similar development just like that, except we will have a street we will be building and dedicating to the city. Now, it will have curb and gutter streets. We'll have sidewalks, all utilities. It's going to be a major, nice subdivision. Not in a flood zone. If you went out there last Friday, it probably looked like that, just like the rest of Paducah did. But during normal times, that's what the stormwater detention pond will take care of. If a major storm event takes place like it did Friday, it will accommodate that where there won't be, all the drainage will go to that and be retained and released at the same rate as it's coming out now, if not better, and protect the residents of River Oaks. I'll be happy to answer any of your questions before you have the other people come up here, but I'll be happy to come back as well.
On the fence, is that just, you called it a construction fence. I mean, I've seen some that are just.
This will be probably a board fence. I mean,
Will it remain though?
Yes.
Is it well enough to?
Yes.
If I were a property owner, that
You wouldn't be
fence
able to
could
see across
stay?
it unless you're really tall.
Okay. That's, thank you.
And
Any
it's
other
just to help
questions?
screen the subdivisions
Right.
from one from the other. That way, when people get in their backyard, they're not looking at each other.
But short of permanent, it's intended to be a real fence, not just.
Right, it's going to be a real fence, a nice fence.
Don't know exactly how tall?
I'm guessing
10
around
foot.
8 feet.
8 foot. Thank
Any
you.
other questions of staff or the developer's representative before we enter a public hearing?
One thing I did
Yes, sir.
want to mention, the length for cul-de-sacs is 650 feet normally in the subdivision requirements. However, it's my understanding they're asking for a waiver, which will be in section 2, when and if that comes along.
Not in front of us tonight, but in the future it would be.
Yes.
Okay.
And we've tried to make that as best as we can. As you can see, we've got, with Rucker Avenue connecting and also the cul-de-sac down there toward the creek to also help us turn around. Emergency vehicles turn around, which when you're talking about that, you're talking about fire trucks, ambulances, as well as school buses.
All right. Anything else of staff or the representative? We will now enter into a public hearing and ask any of the concerned citizens who wish to speak positively or negatively to approach the microphone and state their name and address. Yes, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Jonathan Perkins. I live at 440 West Jefferson here in Paducah. I was raised in the River Oaks neighborhood, which is why this is significant to me, as well as some of my credentials, which I want to throw out there. I am a professional landscape architect. I am an ISA certified arborist. I am the chair of the Paducah Tree Advisory Board, and this project has been very disturbing, to say the least, to watch unfold. There are a list of things that I have here to talk about, not all related to trees, not all related to land disturbance. But if we may start with the subdivision plan first, I would like to do that. I see there is a note on there where the owner is requesting a variance to remove a sidewalk on the south side of the right-of-way. Is that still the case? Send a note right there. I've got highlighted in pink. Is that still the case?
No,
That is no longer a case. Okay, thank you. The other comment with respect to that development plan is the property lines behind River Oaks, between River Oaks on the north side, and the new development. I understand that the developer is not obligated to put in any screening, which is fine, and I'm very familiar, having done this myself on projects, that the 6 or 8 foot tall board screen fence will be something that goes up when the project is constructed. It will rot and fall down as the life of that fence progresses. It will not be replaced in most cases unless the landowner decides that that's important to them. So that's just an aesthetic thing. But also, if I'm understanding the zoning ordinance correctly in chapter 102, they're obligated, this is citywide, obligated to have a utility easement along that property line. And I don't think the ordinance declares whether that's overhead or in-ground utilities. The assumption would be that there's a possibility of overhead utility lines. And where I'm going with this is, if that location is allowed to be there, that means we cannot plant trees on the property line should a owner on either side of the fence decide to plant a tree. Therefore, that's eliminating their ability to screen from their neighbors without the utility company having to come in and remove trees or top trees, which we don't really approve of in Paducah, and we don't allow legally on public property, which is obviously is not. But that is a good standard for us to follow, and I think you all should take that into consideration. The biggest thing I think that gets me right off the bat is we're sitting here tonight to discuss a recommendation for approval of a subdivision plan, that has clearly gone way beyond the approval process. 14 acres of woods were cleared. Erosion sediment control was not put in. Those BMPs were not put in until after I personally filed a complaint with the Division of Water, and they informed me that there was a notice of violation on the landowner. Then, at that point, sediment control started to appear on site. If you go out there right now, regardless of the storm event we had on Friday, at least 50% of that sediment fence is down. It is not being maintained as it is supposed to be, and it is required to be. And so that is another issue to be considered. But frankly, if this were a logging site, a timber harvesting site, and I'll throw another credential, I'm a past Kentucky master logger. Loggers are not allowed to clear against a water body the way this took place here. And this was all done before there was any kind of approval in place. So this entire 14 acres was cleared, and now we're saying, oh, we'll come back in, we'll add, a nice landscape area on tract C and all this. Well, there's 14 acres of woods that were moved. Mr. Gardner just mentioned that only tract B right now was going to be developed, which means that tract A should never have been touched because you guys haven't approved any of this to be touched. So my curiosity takes me to, what do we do now? There are laws, section 126 of our city ordinance, which I did help write, does address some of these tree issues that I'm referring to. So removing trees, we have specifically preservation of trees 15 inches and over. Trees that are 30 inches and over we consider historic, and they should be labeled as such on these submitted plans. There is not a single tree labeled on this plan, and frankly it's because they didn't know what trees they were going to keep or take out. So it seems to me like we're really out of order here. The cart was before the horse. I'm seeking, I guess, tonight to see what kind of consequence, if you will, can be can be rendered for this development, because this is happening all over our community. This is not the first, this is not the only. The water, the runoff issue that was mentioned, or will be mentioned probably by some other folks here tonight, has directly affected my parents who live in that neighborhood. It has increased the runoff. I understand that the construction traffic, if you will, the clearing has disturbed a lot of roots and created some berms and some ruts and stuff like that that has redirected water. Understand that. But that's something that should have been addressed with an erosion sediment control plan that was supposedly filed in November, according to Mr. Gardner. But we did not see any of that until maybe a month ago. So I'm just curious, is this going to keep happening? Is this board or other boards, is our city commission going to continue to allow development like this to take place without any accountability, without any following of the rules that are in place? Again, they're in writing, it's codified. We're not making this stuff up. It's not just personal opinion. So I agree with a lot of this, but I just want to know what our next steps are. I know you guys aren't necessarily the authority over all of the decisions that need to be made on this, and this falls in the hands of the commission. But you guys are kind of the first steps. Like I said, we got out of whack. We're approving a plan that's already going forward. There's already construction entrances. There's already 14 acres of woods cleared. There's already logs and a waterway. There's already failed erosion control BMPs, or best management practices. And I just want to know where it stops, and what we can do to prevent this, whether it be on this one or this project and all moving forward. It's just, I don't know, where do you stop? And I'm speaking on behalf of the entire community, not just River Oaks neighborhood. So I appreciate you all hearing me out. I appreciate you hearing my quivering in my voice, but I'm passionate about it. This is actually those 14 acres of woods were the 14 acres of woods I grew up playing in as a kid, however illegal that may have been at the time. But so it's significant to me. It's significant to our community. We're taking out 14 acres here, we're taking out 30 acres here, we're taking out 30 acres there. This is our quality of life that we're affecting. And, our stormwater is polluted because of it. Our air that we breathe is polluted because of the lack of these trees and things like that can clean our air. So please don't let me sound like a tree-hugging hippie, but this is important to us. This is important to all of us in this community. And I know several of you live or lived around that area, because I know where you lived, and I know it should mean a lot to you too. So I appreciate you hearing me out. Thank you very much.
Before you leave,
Yes, sir.
avail us of any questions that we want to ask Mr. Perkins.
Please, I would
Does
love to
anybody
answer.
have? Well, for my personal edification, since you disclosed that you helped write the tree ordinance, what are the provisions of violating the tree ordinance that?
That is fantastic. And I'd really
I'm
love
just
to know that
curious.
myself. That would probably be a great question for the planning staff to answer, but I don't know.
Without being too lengthy, please don't.
Yeah, no, I don't.
But I'm just curious.
Yeah, I don't know what sort of penalties, if any, exist, honestly. And I think the real question for me, and I'm not the only one to have this opinion, but is who enforces it? Whatever the penalty is, who enforces that? Mm-hmm. So I know planning is the enforcement agency of sorts, correct, Josh? With respect to a plan being in place, put in place.
Well, once a plan is, two things. The tree ordinance that you helped write, Mr. Perkins, is for commercial development, not residential. So, and I appreciate where you're going.
Important, thank you.
But secondly, the enforcement piece of it, if something's not constructed as it shows on the site plan, then either they fix it the way it's supposed to be, or there could be fines incurred. But that's after it's run through planning and engineering, and they have that final site plan approval. And the way that the ordinance reads is, yes, there's either a fine of, I think it's $250, then goes to $500, or imprisonment for not more than 30 days for each offense. And each separate day counts as a separate offense.
Any other questions of Mr. Perkins?
That's just for commercial,
Yes,
not residential.
correct.
But what keeps somebody from buying this 14 acres, and it's their property, and they want to clear it?
We don't have.
I mean, that doesn't have to be approved by us or anybody else here, does it?
No,
I mean, that's,
it's your property.
And as far as enforcement,
right.
I think I can attest to your answer on that, Josh. If something is not built according to what was approved in the site plan, et cetera, the city can require that they either remove it, or they fix it, or they pay the fine, as they did on the entrance to the subdivision I live in.
Mhm.
It had a great, big, beautiful entrance that was not where it should have been, and they did what I think they should have done. They removed it. They required it to be removed. So yes, there is enforcement on if you build something, and you do it wrong. I believe the case of that one was a setback from the street.
Yes.
And it needed to be removed, even though it was gorgeous, looked lovely.
Sure.
But the builder did not follow the rules, and the city required him to remove it. I have no problem with that. I think they did the right thing.
Sure.
So, as far as enforcement, it did happen.
And Josh, assuming you're referring to the section, that is only for commercial only? Even general requirements, okay, that's fine, I stand corrected, then I apologize. But,
Even just we talked a lot about getting the cart before the horse. Just
yes, sir.
someone is clearing their own land, their own property. It has nothing to do with us. And it looks like they have went through the proper steps. Now that they want to utilize that, they went to city engineering, so I don't see.
And I agree that is a kink in the system, and it's not unique to Paducah. As that is a loophole that many developers throughout the state of Kentucky have figured out they can utilize, and that's why I say some of this is out of your hands. This is a commission's question. I'd like to be clarified in the future on how we handle development before development takes place, so. Yes, sir.
Yeah, partly question, curiosity about the utility. Does it have to show whether it's underground or above?
No. it sure
That's not required when we approve one of these.
No, it's just easement for water, gas, whatever the case may be.
Easement is there, and then property owners become restricted by the
Bound
utilities.
by it, yes.
And that's not, I'll say to that note, that wasn't that's in the ordinance. That's nothing to do with that particular developer or owner. So
Right.
that's just in the ordinance, but it was a point to make that should someone decide to plant a vegetative screen, trees or otherwise, then can't really do it. And we don't promote that as a city. The city doesn't promote that. So, because it's an ugly eyesore later for the power company. They're gonna come and hack it all down, so.
Anything else?
I don't have anything specifically, thank you though.
Does anyone else? Yes, please, right over here. I saw this hand first.
Hello, Chad Gillum. I'm 967 River Oaks, or number 14 on there. One of my questions has already been answered. I guess why the hearing now and not 8 months ago when it started. And, like Mr. Griffin said, you don't have to have, you can buy property and do with it what you want. But my only comment, I guess, to that is they knew what they were gonna do, and lack of integrity made the hearing tonight, not 8 months ago. So, I'm right there on the drainage ditch. And I've not been there very long. I've been a homeowner in Paducah for about 5 years. But I did buy this piece of property because of the woods and the ditch next to me. And yes, we've had crazy winds. But when you remove 14 acres coming across that, the winds we have, I guarantee, are higher than anywhere in Paducah, with that. I've had roofing tore off, siding tore off. The main drainage ditch next to me, my fence, everything's eroding in because we're getting so much water. It has the concrete slabs on each side. It's going in behind it, which is caving that in, which is, I mean, that's not my ditch, obviously, but this is a city, I've had to call the city multiple times for the tree trunks and stuff that's come down, blocking the water and coming up over the storm sewers and flooding our whole street. I've always taken pride in whatever I own. I'm one of those weird guys who, I power wash my sidewalk once a year. I want it clean. They're like, well, that's a city. Well, it's in front of my house. If you go in front of my house now, it's mud. It's been that way, That's frustrating. Along with myself and several neighbors, we've had a lot of trees fall in our yard. Of course, they timbered everything except for trees right against our property line. I had heard that they were going to have tree companies come in and take them down versus, the track hoe that was just pulling them down. Well, with the storms this past week, 2 different neighbors had trees fall in their yard and hit their house or garage or something. They've left, I've got a tree in between, when they take all these other trees, trees grow up and they branch out, okay? Well, if you got a wood line up against a tree and you take out all these trees and it's bare right here, you know what's gonna happen. So I guess one of my questions is, what are they gonna do with all those trees right now before more fall? And, that Mr. Gardner did say something about a fence or something that's gonna go there or go along that property line, which is great, but again, are we gonna be able to connect our fence to that? I had, when they were clearing it, limbs and different things damage our chain link fence. Guy took his track hoe bucket and dug into my yard to pull it out. Said he didn't do it. I run equipment. I'm a horticulture background. I wasn't gonna argue with him. That, just things like that. I know, I don't know, I guess I just, I get progress and I get, let's build, it's gonna be more jobs, it's good, there's 1,000 good things that can happen from this. But I think the communication from the developer to the homeowners, should have started 9 months ago. And I just, everybody was just kind of at the will of, we just, all we can do is try and call them and have them fix that or do this and, so.
What else? Anything else?
No, I
Home
believe
direction.
that's it, so.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, please. I see a hand in the back.
My name's Martha Bell. I live on Pines Road. I'm the first house over the railroad, 3415. Where I see you're going to put the street in, and it's going to come to Pines Road there. we have a problem already. The railroad came in there, and to accommodate what we're doing on that side of the railroad, they put in new gates, okay? Where I live, when a train comes by, at least 5 to 8 people will turn around in my driveway. They closed off 34th Street. That's dead end. There's nowhere to go. There was supposed to be a big turnaround. We haven't seen that yet. I am the turnaround. When you bring this street out onto Pines Road, where is the turnaround? Where is this traffic going? Because I'm a little bit tired of keeping the city's traffic in my driveway. I even have had people fuss at me because I tried to get out on Sunday morning to go to church. And I own my driveway. City doesn't. So what accommodations are we going to make for all the traffic that comes down Pines Road? And when a train comes, there's nowhere to go except there. And I can stand in my kitchen window and I can count as many as 143 cars on the railroad coming down. In the meantime, people have got to go to work. I understand that. I understand that people are getting their kids to school. I understand that. But I don't think it should be my problem and add this to the problem I already have. And we never corrected the problem by closing 34th Street. I have a deep hole in my driveway now. I've had my driveway surfaced every year, and I have some guys that work for me. They have washed my decks maybe 3 times since they started cutting the timber out, and the end of my house right now looks like a mud factory. We do not have sidewalks. When we moved to our house way back 34 years ago, that was one of the things they were going to add to our neighborhood. We were going to get sidewalks. Sorry, haven't seen them yet. And when the kids come down through there on their bicycles, I'm telling you, it just, you hold your breath because they're going around cars that are sitting there waiting. And we're looking at a disaster that's going to happen. So can we have some kind of idea of what we're going to do when this traffic comes down to Pines Road? Because I'm right there.
Okay. Anyone have any questions? No, I don't have any answers, I'm afraid. That's kind of outside. Okay.
I know Joey.
Thank you very much.
But I am really, really concerned about our neighborhood.
I understand.
I mean, it's been very different when they cut out all of the timbers and all that. And I'm kind of one that trusts to, we'll be all right. You know, we'll just wait and see what we're going to get. It'll probably be a lot better than we think it's going to be. But when I read this, I was so shocked. because I know what that's going to do for me. As a matter of fact, you know, Union Pacific out of Canada comes down that railroad. And sometimes they pull those trains in there and they'll run all night. And they have to revamp those trains every so often. Well, when you're trying to sleep, that's not very nice, you know. But we have learned to live with that, or I have. I've learned to live with that. But I can't get over the traffic in the driveways and trying to get out to go to church, go to the grocery. I try to go this way, and they're scared of the ditches that are on both sides. So they're going to be over the line. So to try to get out of my driveway and turn either direction is just atrocious. You can't. You can't. And I gotta say, at my age, sometimes I think, oh, just take 2 or 3 of them out and maybe we'll get something done. I thought I could get it done.
Thank you for your candor.
Do consider, what are we gonna do right there on Pines Road? Because we have to do something.
Now, my understanding is, from tonight, we approved the idea that a subdivision could go there. Then the harder work begins to address problems like you just
Well, we've had
identified.
some problems with them trying to come in and out.
For years.
With the equipment, maybe I should say equipment, or whatever they use, coming out on Pines Road. That's not being good.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
My name's Jennifer Smith. I live at 1100 River Oaks Boulevard. We bought our property in 2008, and we thought we were moving into a mature, complete neighborhood. We enjoyed sitting out on our back deck, watching the birds. We had owls. We have some hawks. There were fox, deer, just all kinds of birds. And it was absolutely heartbreaking when they came in there and clear-cut that property. For the people that live on the opposite side of the street that is going to be backing that subdivision, I feel so badly for them because they, again, whatever landscaping they had in their backyards, I thought at least the developer would leave some type of buffer zone in terms of the trees to provide the shade that they had always had. So whatever plants they've got in their backyard, the shock this summer will be ridiculous. Between trees and mature plants, I don't see them surviving. A fence is not going to make up for that lack of shade. Our quality of life, I feel, has gone down. We're seeing majorly increased traffic all through the neighborhood. You know, this isn't progress for us. For those of us in River Oaks Boulevard, it's a nightmare. The railway track there. I heard the gentleman say $600,000 for a house. Living on a railway track, that's almost unbelievable to me. My question has been answered already when they started clear cutting as to whether they were going to be good neighbors. There was no conversation with our neighborhood, none whatsoever. So I agree with the gentleman who said this seems to be a little bit after the fact. You know, it's primarily a single starter family or retirement. I'm approaching retirement. So I am very concerned about if I want to escape the nightmare of the noise and the mess, I don't know that I'm going to be able to sell my house at this point. Sales or rental, and I guess I'm hearing both, that there will be privately owned homes and multifamily. So what I'm going to ask, I would love, because again, somebody else said it before on the prior development proposal. I don't think any one of you would want to live in River Oaks subdivision with this going on. If the approval process had been in the period of time it should have been before the clear cutting, you would not have wanted to approve this if you lived in our subdivision. So one of my last things I'm concerned about is come walk that neighborhood with me, because there is no enforcement of anything going on in the existing apartment complex. The storm drains are clogged. There's probably 6 feet of leaves from multiple seasons. When they do any landscaping or clearing on their property, whoever's working for them takes it across the street and dumps it. There's constant illegal dumping of materials. There's broken glass. There's unbelievable trash. So if there's no enforcement of that multi-home facility, who's going to make sure these people do what they're supposed to do? And all of this, like I said, it's impacting my daily quality of life, and it's going to impact the entire neighborhood's quality of life going forward. So I'm very definitely against it. I don't think we have any recourse. I don't think we're going to be able to stop this thing. But those are my concerns. Who is going to enforce that they are good neighbors? And again, Jennifer Smith, 1100 River Oaks Boulevard. I would happily walk the neighborhood, which each and every one of you, because I do it every day with my dog. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yes, can we have, or ask Mr. Murphy to come up? He's intricately involved and has been, see if he would want to say anything.
Well, wait, we're still answering questions up here. Mr. Murphy, your presence has been requested to answer some of these things. Would you be willing to speak for the city? And the reason he may end up answering what you're going to ask.
My department and my name has been mentioned no less than at least 5 or 6 times since I've been attending this meeting, of which I wanted to address this board and also address the community as well. Are we knowledgeable of the development? Yes. Was the development executed in a sequence by ordinance? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And that's why we're here with a lot of these problems this evening. Have I had conversations with the developer? Absolutely. I met with the developer on Friday, I talked with the developer on Friday morning when we're having the rains, and I talked with the developer on Friday afternoon. I talked with the developer this morning with them, and I've also had the engineering representative with me on Friday morning when my phone was blowing up. So the engineer got to experience what I experience every time we have an event like this, and says, I don't believe this. And I said, now you all understand why things need to be done in the proper sequence. In this particular case, and I met with the Burnett's, and the Burnett's are good people. They are good people. And I'm explaining to them that they need to be good neighbors. This happens to be one of their first developments in the community. And so they bought the property, eager to get going. They self-performed. They did some of the work themselves, and then took out trees, had timber taken off their property. But one of the things they were not aware of as a developer is that if you disturb, and I'm using this as an education process for this board and everybody who's watching right now, it is illegal, federally illegal to remove or denude more than 1 acre of ground without proper erosion control measures in place or without a permit to do so. Is this something that the Burnett's knew? No, it's not something they knew, but it's something that their engineering firm knows. Okay, we did not receive a permit for the what we call the EPSC plan, which is Erosion Protection Sedimentation Control Plan, until November of this year, where all the damage was already done to the property, as far as knocking the trees down and doing all this other, which creates problems with rainfall, with erosion. And this is referred to the Phase 2 SMS4 program. It's something that is a federal law that's part of the Clean Water Act. And the federal government said, we're not going to enforce it. I'll just tell you how it works. And let's just push it down to the state. Let the state do it. Then the state says, well, we're not going to enforce it. Let's just push it down to those cities with a population greater than 10,000 or a population density greater than 1,000 people per square mile. And about 15 years ago, we were one of 102 cities across Kentucky that this was forced on, an unfunded mandate. Whereas my department gets the unfortunate role of going out there and telling folks, you can't do this right now. You need to put these things in place. Like all your erosion control measures have to be in place prior to coming in with equipment. You need to blaze a trail and get the protection there so when it does, nothing happens. You know, the neighbors are not negatively impacted. Did the developer know this? Absolutely not. Did they buy the property? Yes, they did. Did they do what they thought they could do? Yes, they did. Did they know they were doing wrong? No, they didn't. Okay. So, and earlier, Mr. Perkins got up here, of whom I work with a lot, and asked the question, or was talking about some things, and he was right about several things on that. But can we regulate tree removal and on private property of residential private property? The answer to that is no. Okay. Do we regulate wildlife? Do we regulate endangered species? The answer to that question is no. The city does not. The developer does not. The only time that we would do anything like that is if the federal government gave us money to build a project. And then all of those federal laws come into play. If there is a spotted owl or maybe there's Indian relics or potential for artifacts out there, if we're using a federal dollar, absolutely. The federal requirement takes into account those things. But if it's a private developer that's doing something on their private property, they just need to meet the regulations of Paducah with regard to subdivisions. So you've had another one previously that, you know, there were some people talking about some bats. Bats. You got the Indiana bat and those kind of things. We don't regulate that. There's not any part of our ordinance that regulates any of that. Now, I'm not real sure that the federal government regulates it on private property, only when there's a federal dollar involved. So, what is the engineer's job? What is the city engineer's job here? My job, or my office's job, is to protect you all, the adjacent property owners, and then also make sure that the developer meets the requirement that also does not impact the neighbors. So, I get a lot of questions where people come in and they call me and say, can we stop this? I'm like, they're within the limits of the law. The only thing here is that we've gotten out a sequence of it, which I've been very frustrated with, and I'm sure if you talk to Jason Goins, you'll hear that from him as well. But that's behind us. Now what we need to do is work forward. For example, stormwater, all of those things, I will be looking to protect you all, the adjacent property owners, with regard to stormwater. Mr. Gardner brought up some things about the manipulation of the ground did create some areas that ponded water that should not have. Friday morning, I had a conversation with Jason Goins and also some other people on site. We need to do this to take care of that. I've had those conversations this morning with the developer. We need to do that as soon as weather permits. If that could be done in the next week, a lot of things could be resolved. Okay. Now, the things with erosion protection measures, they need attention. They need attention now, okay? The developer knows that. I shared that with him this morning. This one thing about a fence, though, this privacy fence, I'm gonna call it a privacy fence. If you go out there and you look down the property line, it's gonna be not much of a snowball's chance in Hades that a fence can go in there, because there's 40 and 50 years of fences that are there. There's tree growth that's all in the fence, and if you go down, look down through there, you can't physically build a fence unless you're prepared to take down all the trees. Okay, so, or move back a few feet or several feet and get away from the trees. So, again, my interaction with the engineer that's representing the developer has been minimal. I have been active, but I've been given direction along the way about those things. But I'm wanting this project to get in proper sequence with the development process and not deviate. That's all I have to say, unless you all have questions.
Okay, go ahead.
With her, the question about the railroad turnaround, have any?
Thank you for bringing that up. I wish we had these TVs on, because then everybody could see. Rucker is dead ends. It's a street in River Oaks subdivision that dead ends at the property line of that all the rear houses, property line dead end to for that. And they being the developer, were originally bringing out all of their construction traffic, heavy equipment and everything out on Rucker through the subdivision. Rucker's pavement is already failing. As a matter of fact, we have River Oaks Boulevard subdivision to be reworked, entirely reworked with the streets, and some of that's going on as we speak. So I'm like, we don't need to be having all the heavy equipment coming in and out of Rucker, because it's just going to be totally destroyed. So where are you? Ma'am, there you are, back there. I was the one that directed that there's construction traffic come out on Pines Road. You see those big rocks are there. Those rocks are there to try to help remove and those things from the tire. But I've also asked the developer that as you are there, you need to monitor that and clean that road regularly. You know, you're going to build something, you're going to track mud out. You need to clean that regularly, because Pines Road is one of our major connections. Rucker is also, I also asked the engineer to connect what is referred to as Violet Court to Rucker for the trains, to help you. Now, I didn't have you specifically in mind when I was doing it, but I had everybody else in mind, so, but I understand with your driveway. And the situation there was, when cars are queued at Pines Road, they're going to back up, and where they wanted to come out with their entrance, I'm like going, there's no way anybody's going to be able to go anywhere, because that traffic is going to queue and you were not going to be able to come out of that subdivision. Let's make a connection from internally in the subdivision, connect to Rucker, so then when there's a train going, and everybody knows when there's a train going, they can go out Rucker and leave the subdivision, and then also maybe those people that are in the queue, they can turn in the new street and turn right and go out Rucker, because there'll be a new street there where they're not using your driveway. So there is an opportunity there, okay, to help you on that. But I didn't have you in mind on that. I just said there's going to be a problem here, okay? So that helps that a little bit.
Thank you.
So anyway.
Okay.
Yes,
Hey, Mr. Murphy, what, you said the engineering knew, not your engineering, talk about
Their engine.
their engineering, knew these things.
Yeah, their understanding of what is the SMS4 program, which is the federal program, they know that.
Okay.
But, okay, go ahead.
Recourse, when they know. Sounds to me like they violated a law.
The engineer, again, what they are representing them.
Right.
But as far as when they're going out and going to work, I don't know who said what to who or anything like that. I just know that the developer went and started clearing the property, whether the engineer knew or didn't know. I have no idea. I have no idea. I don't know if they had a chance to direct them or not direct them, but I'm just saying they started cutting the trees, and I don't know if there was any interaction there.
So it may have been more the owner, You just don't know.
I don't know. I mean,
Fair enough.
somebody
Got it.
buys a piece of property and they have the wherewithal to do it, they may
Yes.
say, I've got time, put the equipment out there and do it, and not know that they're making a mistake.
I misunderstood. I
Yeah.
thought they had hired someone with the knowledge. and
No,
that knowledge-
actually, here's another thing too, and I said this to the developer this morning. They actually did something very nice. They actually had all those trees ground. They did not burn them. There is concern about burning, and the volume of trees that was out there was significant, would you say? I mean, significant. And several huge piles could have been burned, but they didn't. And all those piles were ground. So that says something about the developer as far as the neighbor. Yeah, they may have made a mistake and cleared the property too soon, okay? But I will tell you how expensive that is. At the city, and this is why everybody wants to burn, because burning is you only have to pay for a track hoe to manipulate the pile, and it's about $150 to $170 an hour. Grinding is $650 an hour. That's about 5 times the cost, or 4 times the cost of burning. So, not doing that, they've spent a lot of money to try to dispose of this material. And it's still out there, and it still needs attention, and they're working on disposing of that. But they did not burn the material for being considerate of the neighbors. They ground it, cost them a lot of money.
I have a quick, okay, so we know that they did wrong because they didn't know.
Right,
Okay, so now we have issues that have come up because of that.
right.
So who's responsible for those issues?
We're trying to work through things, Ms. Ramke. I think I've stated that we've got out of sequence, and what I want is I don't want any more out of sequence on this project. And that means that there needs to be more work through the engineering firm, through my office, and my office back to the engineering firm.
I understand that. I guess my question is the people that are having problems because they now have mud and they have this and they have that. Is there any way that the people didn't know, but that didn't exonerate them from now being responsible? So are they in any way going to help these people straighten out some of these problems?
As a matter of fact, meeting with the developer this morning, they're willing to work with the neighbors on that. Now, a lot of those things are minor. Now, the trees that are fallen are more considerate, but some of the trees that have fallen have been in people's own property with the straight line winds. But, you had 14 acres of trees, and now those trees aren't there. So now the windbreak of this big 14 acres of tree is gone, so you don't have the windbreak. So if you had trees that were marginal, and a big wind come, it's going to take them
Yeah.
down, and that's what.
But it's good to hear that you said the developers are going to work with them to try
Yes, they
to
assured-
correct
They assured
anything.
me of that this morning. I said, the
Okay.
big thing here would be just be a good neighbor and do it unto others as you would have done unto yourself. And
I
they've assured me of that.
agree. Mistakes are made, but if
Yeah.
they're willing to help them,
Yeah.
that's good.
Within those regulations that you mentioned are pushed down federal, state,
The
local,
SMS4, yes.
within those or any other regulations, is there a provision for pausing? If you've done this out of sequence do you have to then pause for a period of time before you can pick up
Right now-
operations?
Right now, they would need to get all of their SMS4 best management practices in place. They need to go out and grade the property and clean it up and get those things in place for that. And I can work with them on that. And to make sure that we control the erosion and that, there's still a lot of cleanup to do on the site for that. I mean, there's still a lot of organic material that is all over, that just needs to be cleaned up and shaped up. And the part that's phase 2, that's west of the creek, that area there needs to be, fixed and then seeded, to grow grass, because you're not going to maintain just denuded earth or stripped ground. You're not going to be able to maintain that. You need to do some seeding for that and until your other phase comes along. But these are situations that hit us on a regular basis. We, the city, we are trying to turn around the population trend of decrease, and we're trying to raise that, reverse that role so that we're noticed as a growing city, not something that is declining for economic development and jobs. That's what, so we're trying to support development. But right now in today's housing market, the housing market is not the $500,000 house. The housing market is looking for something around 2,000 square feet that's more affordable for those people who may need it. And of the 6 subdivisions as we've come in, every one of them are representative of that, a duplex, a fourplex, something of multifamily housing, apartments. We've probably had 1,000 apartments built in the last 10 years.
Any other questions of Mr. Murphy before we release him? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank
We
you.
now will accept other questions from them directed to the commission. And if you have questions that Mr. Murphy could then answer, we may end up asking him to come back. But please direct your questions up here.
Chad Gillum,
Yes, sir.
967 River Oaks. Just 2 questions. So the trees that are still along the property line, do we know if those are going to be taken down, or have they deemed those on our property?
We do not have that information.
Okay. And then my house is where the retention pond's going to go. Is that going to be, I mean, I know what a pond is, but is it actually going to be a pond that's going to hold water? And will it have movement? Just thinking mosquitoes, stagnant water, that kind of thing. So,
Okay.
and
All
I
right.
don't know if you can answer that at all either. So,
I'm going to ask Mr. Gardner if he would come up and speak to the retention pond, or Mr. Goins. I think if you would help educate the difference between detention, retention, and
Sure, yeah, I'm Jason Goins. For those that don't know me, I'm engineer and owner at SiteWorks Survey and Design. We're the engineers on the project, and the detention pond that's designed is intended to be a dry detention pond that will stay dry and maintained, and will only have water in it during a larger storm event. It's designed for the 10-year and the 100-year storm event, but during most times, that pond will be dry. So hope that answers that.
will that be with the culvert?
There'll be an outlet pipe that controls the discharge, but just a normal storm event, water will run through the pond, through the pipe. In the larger events, the pipe will fill up, and then the pond will then detain the additional water. And then once the storm event's over, it drains out slowly and then goes back to a dry state.
thank you, Mr. Goins. Are you having any questions of him?
Trees that are currently there, do you know if they're going to stay or?
My understanding, I'm sure that they probably won't be addressed immediately during construction of each home or duplex. I'm sure they were probably looked at on an individual basis, and if, a lot of these trees that are on the property line, the root wads may extend over into the neighbor's property. Those are the ones that have probably been left. So I would say at that time that will be addressed if they need to be left because they're going to do too much damage to the neighbor or whatever by taking them down. I'm sure they will stay, but I'm sure the developer would hopefully meet with each owner and kind of work that out on an individual basis.
Okay. Any other questions, Mr. Goins? I have one. No one else. On the privacy fence, will there be conditions of the conveyance for each individual lot for the perpetual maintenance of that fence? Or will that developer retain that?
It's probably a question for the developer, but my thought would be if there is an HOA set up, I'm not sure if there will. Do you know, Mike?
Not yet, it's just going to be maintained by the developer right now.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
It will probably, if built, like it was brought up before, it will probably be built by several feet off the property line.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, on our property that we're trying to develop.
That's why I was curious who was going to end up. It's not a shared, it's going to be
It will be the full responsibility of the owner.
the developer or the owner of the lots?
Well, the owner of the lots will be the developer.
Okay, it's not their intention to convey those off. Okay,
Not this time.
okay, thank you.
I know it was mentioned overhead power lines, things like that.
He needs to come up here. They can't hear.
Oh, Mike, you can't be heard. Could you come to the microphone and say that? Sorry, but please repeat that.
No problem. It was mentioned before about the utilities. All the utilities are proposed to be underground and along the new street that will be constructed. Nothing along the back or overhead that would cause any problems with the neighbors back there. In fact, unless the city mandates it, we won't even have a easement dedicated back there. Everything will be along the front of the road. All the duplexes, all the buildings will be front on that new road, and all the easements and utilities will be on that new road.
So River Oaks currently are serviced by the front of their
I'm not
lots?
sure exactly where all their utilities come from.
Okay.
I know the sewer serves them because there's sewer manholes in the street.
Okay.
So I know they're served by the front, as well as water.
That doesn't really matter, but I just
Yeah.
thought about that. All
Sure.
right, thank you. Any other questions, comments from the audience? Yes, sir, please approach.
Zach Jenkins, 934 Loring Lane. So I've got, whereas she had the issue with, the road there at Pines Road, and the new Violet Court or whatever, I've got problems with it coming through on Rucker there. Because throughout that whole neighborhood, you've got cars that park on either side of the road, okay? Most of the time, right back to back on both sides. Sometimes the neighbors, they're nice enough to stagger, but then you're bringing in 74 plus vehicles to this area. You're giving them 2 areas of exit only throughout both phases, because upon the second phase, there's still no other exit, because they talked about no exit over on Roel Circle, because that is private. And so you're gonna be bringing probably about 200 cars, because you think these $600,000 houses, my age group isn't gonna be able to live there. I'm not gonna be able to afford a house there. So you're looking at multiple cars. You're probably looking at an older family, 2 vehicles, probably children, so 2, 3, 4 cars maybe. And then you're giving them, 1-car garage, short driveway, and parking them on the road there. And then you're also trying to funnel them through Rucker, Loring Lane, River Oaks Boulevard, all those sort of areas over there where cars are super close. And I mean, we all have issues getting in and out of our own driveways as it is right now, much less adding 74 to 100 plus vehicles coming through there. And I can see that there has been some miscommunications with, the developer, engineering department, all that sort of stuff. So I'm kind of hoping after this meeting, some things get a little bit more settled to where everybody feels a little more comfortable with the whole situation. Because it just really seems like everything got off on the complete wrong foot. Because by no means am I against any development in Paducah, and I don't think anybody else is in this room. What we are against is things like this happening, to where we don't know what's going on, we don't know what's going there, we don't know who's gonna live there, and really, they're banking on people buying a $600,000 home right next to a railroad that, how many times does that train cross come by every day? 8 to 15 times is what we've counted. 8 to 15 times. You hear that horn, it crosses every intersection more than 4 times. So you hear that horn about 20-something different times before it is completely out of that area. And you're building homes right there next to that. And we're hoping and praying that they're going to buy them and they're not going to sit there empty. And then we're also hoping that this other section that they are leaving open is going to be developed in the hopes that people buy these homes, because otherwise it's probably just going to sit there empty and have grass on it, because we didn't do our due diligence. We did not go through the correct processes to go through all of this, and really, get it all sorted out and figured. So yeah, those are my issues. Really hope that we can table this and really not set anything into motion quite yet until some more things are figured out. That's all.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Hello, I'm Jerry Arnzen. I actually just came down here with my wife just to see what the project was actually going to be composed of. And whether
What is your address, sir?
I have 3 houses in River Oaks.
Okay.
801 River Oaks, 935 North 32nd, and I have a house on Rural Circle, close to, excuse me, the Minnick Apartments. So we actually came down here to see whether or not we would benefit from this particular project. You know, would our properties maintain their value, or would they go up in value, or go lower in value, or just stay the same? So that's the only reason I'm really here. But I've heard quite a bit this evening out of this particular project and the previous project. And I guess what got my attention is the impact on the environment, actually. First project mentioned wetlands. It mentioned endangered species. This one mentioned stormwater, surface water runoffs. It mentioned relocation of habitat, and many other things. Not using best management practices for surface water runoff. So those got my attention. So I guess my question to the commission actually is, before awarding projects, do you really require any type of environmental impact studies to see what the impact is actually going to be on the environment? I know Mr. Murphy talked about that federal regulations or federal projects normally require an environmental impact study, but not necessarily for city or county. So my question is, do you really even consider the impact on the environment before you award a project? Also, I truly have a large interest in River Oak subdivision. I was raised there. My father moved from Cape Girardeau when I was 3 years old, and I was raised in that subdivision. As a kid, I played in that woods. Mr. Steinhauer actually was the farmer that owned all that property. He raised cattle where all that later became woods, and the trains used to come down the track and set fields on fire. And the city fire department used to show up all the time to put the fires out. So as a kid, we'd go back there and help them put the fires out. But as time went by, the property grew up, it became a thick woods, and then it was full of wildlife habitats such as deer, foxes, and other types of animals, which a lot of people enjoyed. But I guess that's my main question. But if you could answer me and tell me whether or not, is it going to be rental property, or are the units going to be sold? And is the developer going to build the properties? I'd just like to have those questions, answered.
Okay, thank you.
No, I can't answer though. It's the same answer I gave when I presented the project. These are going to be owned and maintained by the developer. They're not going to be, they will be rented out. They're not going to be sold at this time. They're all going to be owned, developed, built by the developer. Streets, structures. One misconception I did throw out a number at the very beginning of just a guess of around 600,000. That's not for each unit. That's for the entire. That's really for 2 units. Not for each unit that's going to be there. That's for each building. And I'm only going by the square footage times what's builders are charging right now. So I mean, I don't have an appraisal from anybody at this point. I've gotten one down the road from something that's a little bit similar, a little bit larger. It was for $840,000, $430,000 for each side of a townhome. These are going to be smaller than that, but they will be rented out. But the entire development will be owned and maintained and built by the developer. They have no intentions at this time of starting to sell off any of these. They want to do it themselves. The builders have been, it may be one of their first developments they've done in the city, but I mean, the builders, they've been building homes around here for years and years and years. And I'm extremely old right myself, and they've been building them my lifetime when all throughout as I was into this business out of college. They've been building them ever since then. That's a long time, because I'm 68 years old. When I got out of college, they were building with other builders. So they have a lot of history, and they have a lot of experience.
I have a question of Josh.
Okay. Anything else?
Only if anybody else has any
I
questions.
won't guarantee that, but let us, we have a question from Commissioner.
It's not really a question. Josh, I think that perhaps it would be a good idea to clarify what our role is here and what we are assigned to do based on the comprehensive plan and based on R1, R2, et cetera. For instance, environmental. I mean, is that part of the comprehensive plan? I mean, I know that answer, but I would like for you to explain to the people that, we're more than willing to listen, but our jurisdiction is defined by the comprehensive plan and the different zoning regulations. So would you?
Thank you, Vice Chair Shramke, for that. This parcel is zoned R3, which is medium-density residential. And what that means that as long as each lot has 50 foot of frontage for each structure and 4,000 square feet per unit, or a total of 8,000 square feet, that meets the zoning regulations. And whenever you hear attorneys talk of this, if it meets that, what they call a checklist, then it's approved for minor subdivisions. However, in this case, because they're creating more than 5 lots and dedicating a public street, it does take a public hearing. The Planning Commission, what their role is to make sure that the underlying zone is upheld as far as the development standards, the setbacks, the lot square footage, the frontage, make sure there's going to be detention on the site, to make sure that the preliminary development elements are there. That way, whenever a final plan comes before this body, they know that those things are taken care of on that final plan, which is going to show the sidewalks, it's going to have all the stormwater calculations, it's going to have the road cross sections, it's going to have everything developmentally that we need to make an informed decision to approve it. And as far as the environmental piece of it, I do want to mention that we do have and as Mr. Perkins mentioned, we do have a newly adopted ordinance, maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, to where on certain developments, tree size does have to be marked significant or historic. So we are taking steps in that direction as far as environmental protections. So that is coming into place. We may look at expanding some of that. Hopefully we do following this conversation. So as far as the environmental part, that is minimalistic on our end, but we are taking steps for that to happen. Hopefully that answered your question.
I think you did, because what I was heading for is, can we deny something based on environmental? Not really, because that's not what our chore is. That's not what we're assigned to do.
Right, and I'd like to make another point of clarification if I could. I believe it was Mr. Jenkins asked about tabling the proposal. That's what the motion is to table it generally until we get all these bits and pieces of information answered on the preliminary plat. So what you is asking for it to be tabled, that is what the motion is.
Thank you, Josh.
Any other questions or comments from the audience?
What questions are you looking to get answered then, if you're looking to table them?
It's the standard motion that we have. That way, after this meeting tonight and hearing all the testimony, you all can submit a final plat that addresses concerns, and also the sidewalks, the stormwater, the streets. For example, if this body had discussed making fences mandatory, that
For
was
your
something that would show up on the final plat.
Clarification, well, let me answer it this way. Excuse me, interrupt you. Our motion is to move that the preliminary subdivision plat for 3315 Pines Road be approved, and that the matter be conditionally, generally pending submission of a final plat incorporating all requirements made known to the petitioner at the conclusion of the meeting. So there's still a lot of work to do, but this is a positive step toward that ultimate approval, would be that. Yes. Yes. It is a very daunting task for all of us. Once again, any call for any questions, comments? Yes, sir. Please don't start talking till you get to the microphone.
I'm Morgan Hadfield. I live at 963 River Oaks Boulevard. We've covered basically everything. I have a lot of complaints, but two things I think can be actual questions that we can definitively have confirmed. These trees behind our house, I don't want to know in 8 months when they finally get down building to where we're at, are those trees staying or going? Is that property ours or not? Where exactly does that fence line go? Because it's crooked the whole way down. I want to know exactly where that is at before they start making all these plans, because we're going to get more wind. These trees are going to start coming down. The three that are behind our house are all like angled like this over top of our yard. So it's a matter of time. There wasn't a problem when those trees were there, blocking them from wind, but now that they're not there, one's going to fall in our shed, the other two are going to fall on the fence line. Those have to be determined before, because they either have to come down or they have to do something about that. Is that our responsibility? If it is, are we going to be compensated for that? Because that's an expense we never expected to have. Those are my two questions that I think can actually be written and figured out.
Okay. Do you wish to tackle that?
I have no comment on that one.
There is no real answer for that, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Then I will declare that the public hearing is concluded. Now we're back to commission. Any other final comments, questions? All right, our actions here are to approve as presented, to deny as presented, to table the motion for various reasons, which could include an acquisition of additional data, which we've just seen that happen tonight, or approve with conditional changes as may be made and voted on in the process. I say that because I do have a concern about the having a fence maintenance provision addressed. Would it be appropriate to include that in our
It
provision?
certainly can be, and what I would imagine would happen is a note for the maintenance will be on the faces for the final plat. Mike, Jason, thoughts?
That can be done that way, if that's.
Sure. Okay.
How it's done is not as relevant as the fact that something is done on that.
Make clear who's responsible.
Yes. Would there be a motion to include that in our decision?
Do we have anything else that we wanted to include
Great question, yes.
before
Yes.
we make that motion? Because if there are other issues that we want included, when we vote on this,
Yes.
or do we need to table and wait for more information? There were a lot of questions, a lot of whatever. I mean, what do we all think?
Point of clarification on that, the motion is to approve but table generally until we get that information back.
Okay.
So what I think the appropriate thing to do is to give the professional representatives here the information you're seeking, to have those answers before the final plat or at the same time the final plat comes before you all.
Okay.
With the homeowners that have the questions about the trees, developer, could they use this? This may be a question for Mr. Goins, the engineering firm to answer those questions specifically for each homeowner.
Again, he has to come up.
Yeah. And I'll be glad to speak on that. I mean, I think it sounds as though there's some concern, there's trees along the property line that could potentially fall within, next week or a year from now. We don't know. And I believe the neighbors are kind of, they're concerned about that. Our company can't really, I think that's probably a question for the developer, the Burnett's, and maybe, so I don't know if they have a comment on that, but it sounds like to me maybe the developer should have a conversation with those owners and look at those trees and determine what can be done. Some of those fences, I mean, based on our survey, some of the existing fences that the neighbors are calling theirs are actually on the developer's properties. There's a lot of things there that probably need to be cleaned up on both sides. So it's hard to say definitively how to address that other than maybe the developer looking at each lot and each concerned area and maybe working out something with each lot owner over there.
As a part of your survey process, have you marked all the corners so that these people know where they're?
All the existing corners of the property have been marked and identified, but there's a pretty long run down that river road, and if they're some of the intermediate lot corners, if we found them, we would have flagged them at the time. But the new corners for the new lots will not be set. They'll be set between now and the time the final plat.
Yes, I understand that. I'm talking about so they know where their property lines are.
It may or may not. If there was anything there, we would have found and flagged it, but during, sometimes those get knocked out and they may not be visible today.
Yes, okay. But there was an attempt.
And, that's something too that we probably could do is we could mark some intermediate stakes so people will know, and then each tree can be looked at in that regard.
I think that would satisfy quite a few of those questions of you answered Rick's question.
We can do that. We can stake down through there to make it clear. We can do that.
I would think you have to do that anyway if you're going to put a fence up.
Before a fence is built, yes.
Yes.
I don't believe now's the time to build it, but in the meantime, we'll be glad to do that.
That way these fine folks can go out and see exactly, because some of them probably haven't ever known where their exact property lines were. Okay.
Be glad to.
Any other conditions or?
Yes, and before you go away, Mr. Murphy had mentioned the trees as he looked down through there. I haven't looked down through the property. Putting a fence in is not an easy undertaking. I believe it was him. Someone had mentioned all the intertwining of old fences and a lot of, they're not trees necessarily, but it's still a break line of some sort that would have to be removed in order to put up an 8-foot fence. Is that the right sequence?
I think that's why they were discussing moving the fence a few feet off of the line.
Or would we just leave that all alone and move it? Is that option something we ought to include in this?
That's why I mentioned, I don't really care how they do the fence, but if they're going to do a fence, it has to be maintained perpetually.
Okay, and that would solve it.
And that, well, I don't know if my wording would suffice what you're asking, so I don't want to put words in your mouth.
I don't want to take away a break line while we're putting up a fence, if we can avoid it. They have very little break line left.
That's why we have
14
wonderful
acres.
experts to figure these things out.
Yes, exactly.
So what you propose would be added to the list of the other questions that we had, correct? So we
No,
don't-
I'm not asking to ask, I'm putting a
Provision.
provision of the,
Conditions.
that it need to be addressed, who's responsible for that.
Okay.
That's part of our preliminary approval.
Is a fence even required? I don't know if it's a requirement. I think that's also something, am I right, Josh? I think,
Yeah, a fence isn't required.
I think that's just
But you
something
all
that
have
the
proposed a
developer, yes,
fence.
that's, yeah, out of courtesy.
And if you're going to
So-
propose it, who's going to maintain it is important to determine.
Would you like to state the motion you would like?
If that, that can be, again, like, we'll be glad to define that and
Okay.
label that on the final plat.
Then, while I don't like to make motions as chairperson, I will make the motion to include in our approval the perpetual maintenance of the fence that has been proposed to be built.
Second.
Please word that correctly for me,
Yeah,
Josh.
and I'll second that
Yes, sir,
motion
Mr.
after he words it correctly.
Any question on that amendment to the motion?
I've got a note for the fence maintenance provision in perpetuity on the final plat.
Okay. Any other, we have a motion on the floor for that item. Any
Yes,
other
sir.
discussion?
And after you all decide that if what you want to add, we need to vote on the amendment, and then we'll vote on the final motion.
We have a
as-
motion with only one item in the amendment.
Mhm.
We need to act on that,
Yeah.
and then we'll do the final approval.
Yes, correct.
So I'm going to call the question call the roll on the amendment, which you just described.
Commissioner Shramky.
Aye.
Commissioner Benberry.
Aye.
Commissioner Griffin.
Aye.
Commissioner Morrison.
Aye.
Chairman Wade.
Aye. Now, any final discussion about the overall motion? Hearing none, please call the question.
This gentleman is waving his arm.
Whoa,
about the
our public hearing is closed. Yes, sir. All right, call the question, or call the roll, excuse me.
Commissioner Shramky.
Aye.
Commissioner Benberry.
Aye.
Commissioner Griffin.
Aye.
Commissioner Morrison.
Aye.
Chairman Wade.
Aye. All right, our final act of business tonight, and I would ask any of y'all who would exit, please do so quietly. We have one more item of business. And Commissioner Benberry, I believe you have that
Yes, sir.
item.
I move that this commission adopt a resolution forwarding a positive recommendation to the Board of Commissioners to vacate and close 4,356 square feet of Monroe Street between 200 and 306 North Second Street.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is just a portion of Monroe Street that is right across from the intersection of Second and Monroe at the Quilt Museum. The other portion of Monroe Street was closed in 1940, but for some reason, this small portion was left. So the petitioner would like to go ahead and close this portion of right-of-way, which is actually, in its current capacity, serving the park and field for the farmer's market. So it's just to vacate that portion to consolidate it within the farmer's market parking area.
And I don't believe we have anybody from representing the owner. So this is now a public hearing. Anyone wishing to come forward to speak to this item, positive or negative, please come forward now. Hearing none, I now declare the public hearing is closed. Commissioners, do you have any questions, comments, or concerns?
So this will remain parking, just make sure I heard that correctly.
Yes, as part of the drive aisle, the 24-foot drive aisles that go between there. Right now, when you pull in, you can go forward and then turn in either way, but it will be part of the circulation on the site.
Thank you.
And how did this get missed?
Chairman Wade, if I was there in 1940, I could tell you, but
I expected your crystal ball to pontificate about that. All right, call the roll, please.
Commissioner Benberry?
Aye.
Commissioner Griffin? Aye. Commissioner Morrison?
Aye.
Commissioner Shramky?
Aye.
Chairman Wade?
Aye. With no other business, at 7:45, declare this meeting concluded. Our next meeting is April the 3rd. Thank you.
I will not be there.
Okay.